Welcome to Dream Tales Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is the Judo Bridge. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle 528 Hz melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. The Judo Bridge begins now, and when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. The Judo Bridge. James Mackenzie stood at the edge of the rugby pitch, watching his former teammates practice under the gray Edinburgh sky. 6 months had passed since the injury that ended his rugby career, but the ache in his knee was nothing compared to the emptiness he felt, watching from the sidelines. At 18, he had been the most promising player at St. Andrew's Academy, with scouts from professional teams already showing interest. Now, he was just another student with a permanent limp and a collection of rugby trophies gathering dust in his bedroom. You should try something different, his physiotherapist, Mrs. Davidson, had suggested during their final session. Your knee won't handle the impact of rugby anymore, but that doesn't mean you can't stay active. Have you considered martial arts? There's a judo club that meets at the community center. It might be gentler on your joints than you think. James had dismissed the idea initially. Martial arts seemed so foreign to him, so different from the team sport he had loved since childhood. But as weeks turned into months and the void in his life grew larger, he found himself standing outside the Edinburgh Community Centre on a Tuesday evening, watching through the window as people in white uniforms threw each other onto thick mats. The instructor, a compact Japanese man in his 50s named Tanaka Sensei, noticed James watching and stepped outside. "You are interested in judo?" he asked with a warm smile that creased the corners of his eyes. "I don't know," James admitted, unconsciously rubbing his injured knee. "I used to play rugby, but..." He trailed off, not wanting to explain the whole story to a stranger. Tanaka-sensei nodded, as if he understood everything James hadn't said. Judo is different from rugby, but also similar. Both require strength, strategy, and respect for opponents. Come inside and watch properly. First lesson is free if you decide to try. The dojo, as Tanaka-sensei called the training space, smelled of sweat and clean cotton. About 20 people of various ages were warming up, and James was surprised to see they ranged from teenagers to people in their 60s. Everyone moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost dance-like compared to the aggressive charges and tackles of rugby. In judo, we use opponents' strength against them, Tanaka-sensei explained, as two students demonstrated a throw. It's not about being strongest or fastest. It's about understanding balance, timing, and technique. The founder of judo, Kano Jigoro, was smaller than most of his opponents, but he could throw anyone. James watched, fascinated, as a petite woman threw a man twice her size over her hip, landing him perfectly on the mat. The man rolled smoothly and stood up, bowing to his partner before they repeated the technique. Everyone starts as white belt, Tanaka-sensei continued. You learn to fall before you learn to throw. This protects you and builds foundation. Judo means gentle way, but don't be fooled. It requires dedication and discipline. That evening, James signed up for his first lesson. His mother was surprised, but supportive when he came home with a registration form and a pamphlet about the dojo. It might be good for you, she said, relief evident in her voice. She had been worried about his depression since the injury. The first few weeks were humbling. James, who had been naturally athletic and coordinated on the rugby pitch, found himself struggling with basic movements. Learning to fall properly, ukemi, as it was called, was particularly challenging. His instinct was to catch himself with his hands, but Tanaka-sensei patiently corrected him again and again. Spread impact across your whole body, the instructor demonstrated, slapping the mat with his entire arm as he fell. Like this, you can fall 100 times and not get hurt. Very important for life, not just judo. It was during his 4th week at the dojo that James met Kenta Yamamoto. The Japanese exchange student arrived one evening wearing a worn brown belt, bowing deeply to Tanaka-sensei and speaking rapid Japanese. He was studying at Edinburgh University for a year and had been looking for a place to continue his judo training. Yamamoto-kun will help with teaching, Tanaka-sensei announced. He has been practicing judo since he was 6 years old in Osaka. Kenta was assigned to help James with his techniques, and despite the language barrier, Kenta's English was functional but limited. They quickly developed a friendship. Kenta was patient and encouraging, using gestures and demonstrations when words failed him. In Japan, judo is, how you say, part of education, Kenta explained one evening after practice as they sat in a nearby cafe. Every student must learn, not just sport, but philosophy, way of thinking? James was intrigued. What kind of philosophy? Kenta struggled to find the right words. Jita kyoe, mutual benefit. When I throw you, you learn to fall. When you throw me, I learn too. We both become stronger. Not like competition, where one wins, one loses. Both improve together. This concept was revolutionary to James, who had spent years in the competitive world of rugby, where winning was everything. In judo, he discovered even losing had value if you learned from it. As weeks turned into months, James found himself improving rapidly under Kenta's guidance. His rugby-trained body adapted well to the physical demands of judo once he understood the principles. His knee, surprisingly, felt better with the controlled movements and strengthening exercises that were part of training. Kenta began teaching James Japanese terms and concepts beyond just technique names. During breaks, he would share stories about his own judo journey in Japan, painting a picture of a culture where martial arts were deeply integrated into daily life. "My grandfather, he is 8th Dan," Kenta said proudly one day, showing James a photo on his phone of an elderly man in a red and white belt. "He says judo is like bridge, connects people, connects cultures. That's why I want to teach when I go back to Japan." "You want to be a sensei?" James asked. Kenta nodded. "But first, must understand different ways of teaching. Scottish people, British people, different from Japanese. Tanaka sensei, he very good at adapting. I learned from him how to teach foreigners. I mean non-Japanese." He corrected himself with an embarrassed smile. James laughed. "We're all foreigners to someone, aren't we?" Their friendship extended beyond the dojo. Kenta introduced James to Japanese cuisine beyond sushi, taking him to a small Japanese restaurant in Edinburgh, where they served authentic ramen and yakitori. In return, James showed Kenta around Scotland, taking him hiking in the Highlands and introducing him to Scottish traditions. "Haggis is interesting," Kenta said diplomatically after his first taste of the traditional Scottish dish, making James laugh so hard he nearly choked on his own food. One particularly memorable weekend, they traveled to Glasgow for a judo competition. James wasn't competing, he was still a white belt. But Kenta had entered the brown belt division. Watching his friend compete was a revelation. Kenta moved with a fluidity and precision that seemed almost supernatural, anticipating his opponents' movements and redirecting their force effortlessly. "You make it look so easy," James said after Kenta won his division. 15 years of practice, Kenta replied with a modest shrug. "In Japan, we say nana korobi ya oki, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Every loss teaches something." It was during this trip that Kenta first mentioned the possibility of James visiting Japan. "You should come to Osaka next summer," he suggested. "My family has small dojo. You could train there, see real Japanese judo culture." The idea planted itself in James's mind and began to grow. He started researching Japanese culture more seriously, even attempting to learn basic Japanese phrases with Kenta's help. His pronunciation was terrible, making Kenta wince and laugh in equal measure. But he persisted. Tanaka sensei noticed James's growing interest and began sharing more about Japanese martial arts culture. "Judo is just one path," he explained. "In Japan, we have concept of Budo, martial way, not just fighting technique, but way of living, way of improving self." "Is that why you came to Scotland?" James asked. Tanaka sensei smiled. "I came 30 years ago for business, but I missed judo, missed teaching. So I started this dojo. Now, I build bridge between Scotland and Japan, one student at a time." As autumn arrived, James faced his first grading. The test for yellow belt seemed daunting. He had to demonstrate various throws, holds, and show proper etiquette and understanding of judo principles. Kenta helped him prepare, staying after regular practice to work on techniques. Remember, grading is not just about physical technique, Kenta advised. Tanaka-sensei watches spirit, attitude, respect. These equally important. The day of the grading, James was more nervous than he had ever been before a rugby match. But as he stepped onto the mat and began demonstrating what he had learned, a calm settled over him. This wasn't about beating anyone else. It was about showing how much he had grown. He performed each technique methodically, remembering Kenta's advice about maintaining proper form over speed. When it came time for randori, free practice, he found himself naturally flowing from one technique to another, his body remembering the countless hours of repetition. After the grading, as Tanaka-sensei tied the yellow belt around James's waist, he said quietly, "You understand now. Judo is not about winning or losing. It's about continuous improvement. You have good spirit, Mackenzie-kun." The use of the Japanese honorific made James smile. He was becoming part of something larger than himself, a tradition that stretched back over a century and spanned continents. Winter brought new challenges and opportunities. Kenta organized a cultural exchange event at the university, where the judo club would demonstrate techniques and explain the philosophy behind the martial art. James, despite being relatively new to judo, was asked to speak about his journey from rugby to judo. "When I first walked into the dojo, I thought I had lost everything," James told the assembled crowd. "Rugby was my identity, but judo taught me that sometimes we need to fall before we can learn to rise differently. In rugby, I learned to run through obstacles. In judo, I learned to redirect them, to find harmony instead of conflict." His words resonated with many in the audience, including several rugby players from the university team, who approached him afterward, curious about trying judo themselves. As spring approached, so did the end of Kenta's exchange program. The reality that his friend would soon return to Japan cast a shadow over James's training. But Kenta had news that brightened the mood. "My grandfather wants to meet you," Kenta announced one evening. "He has offered to host you for summer. You can train at our family dojo, maybe even visit Kodokan." "The Kodokan?" James's eyes widened. He had read about the legendary headquarters of judo in Tokyo, where Kano Jigoro had established the art. "Yes, we have connection there. My grandfather trained there when he was young. He can arrange visit." James immediately began making plans. He took on extra shifts at his part-time job to save money for the trip and intensified his Japanese studies. His parents, seeing how judo had transformed their son from a depressed teenager to someone with purpose and direction, fully supported his plans. The farewell party for Kenta was bittersweet. The entire dojo gathered to wish him well, and Tanaka-sensei presented him with a special gift, a calligraphy scroll with the characters for judo that he had painted himself. "You have been excellent ambassador for Japanese judo," Tanaka-sensei said, "and you have helped build bridge between our cultures. This is true meaning of judo." Kenta's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he accepted the gift. Later, as James walked him to the bus station for his journey to the airport, Kenta stopped and turned to his friend. "James, you know what makes you special, judoka?" he asked. James shook his head. "You understand with heart, not just body. Many people learn techniques, but you understand spirit. My grandfather will like you very much." They embraced, a gesture that would have seemed foreign to James months ago, but now felt natural. As the bus pulled away, James didn't feel sad. Instead, he felt excited about the future, about the journey that lay ahead. In the weeks following Kenta's departure, James threw himself into preparation for his trip to Japan. Tanaka-sensei began teaching him more advanced techniques and cultural aspects of Japanese martial arts. "When you visit dojo in Japan, you represent our dojo," Tanaka-sensei explained. "Your behavior reflects on all of us. Be humble, be respectful, eager to learn." James also began corresponding with Kenta via email, learning more about what to expect in Osaka. Kenta sent photos of his family's dojo, a traditional building with worn wooden floors and walls lined with photos of past students. "My grandfather very excited to meet you," Kenta wrote. "He has planned special training program. Also, my grandmother wants to feed you until you cannot move. She worries all foreign students are too skinny." As summer approached and James's departure date neared, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. The rugby injury that had seemed like the end of everything had actually been a beginning. Through judo, he had discovered not just a new sport, but a new way of understanding himself and the world. The night before his flight, James stood in his room, looking at his old rugby trophies. They no longer represented loss to him, but rather a chapter in his story that had led to something unexpected and wonderful. He carefully packed his judo gi, his belt, and a bottle of Scottish whiskey as a gift for Kenta's grandfather. At the airport, his parents saw him off with proud smiles. "Who would have thought," his father said, "that our rugby player would become a judoka heading to Japan? Life throws us in unexpected directions," James replied, using a judo metaphor that made his mother laugh. As the plane lifted off, carrying him toward Japan and new adventures, James thought about Tanaka-sensei's words about judo being a bridge. He was crossing that bridge now, not just between Scotland and Japan, but between who he had been and who he was becoming. The boy who had stood dejected at the edge of a rugby pitch 6 months ago was gone. In his place was a young man who understood that strength wasn't just about physical power, but about adapting, learning, and finding harmony in unexpected places. When the plane touched down in Osaka, James saw Kenta waiting at the arrival gate, grinning broadly. Behind him stood an elderly man in a traditional kimono, Kenta's grandfather, the 8th Dan Master. As James bowed deeply in the traditional greeting he had practiced countless times, the old man's weathered face broke into a warm smile. "Welcome to Japan, Mackenzie-kun," he said in accented but clear English. Your journey in true judo begins now. James straightened from his bow, meeting the master's eyes with quiet confidence. He was ready for whatever came next, knowing that every fall would teach him how to rise stronger. The bridge he had built through judo had brought him here, to this moment, to this new beginning. And he knew, with certainty, that this was exactly where he was meant to be. you